Caspian, I'm curious, what is like your dream destination for your gap year? Where are you just longing to go? Let me know in the chat. And for those joining, please let us know where you're joining from, where you're longing to go. I actually have that as my next slide. And where you can tune in from. What is your dream destination? Drop it in the chat. This will also help me orient everything that I'm sharing with you today to make sure that it is also in alignment and like specific to any nuances or, you know, details in regards to a destination you might be traveling to. Sorry, I got my tea here. I've had a lot of meetings and calls today, so I want to make sure that you can hear me nice and clearly. I see some people trickling in, and I would love for you to engage with us in the chat. So I'm going to get us started, but of course, like as we're going, drop questions, words of praise, emojis of excitement as we go through today's information. And as I mentioned, if you have a pen and a notepad nearby, I highly recommend taking notes as we go through this, because there is so much to cover. And also this call will be recorded so that at the end, you are able to go back. If there's anything that you want covered again, you can just watch me tell it all and all the excitement that we had this evening. Amazing. So today we're going to cover 5 main things here. And actually, hold on, this little block is in my way. I think it's okay. All right. So today we're going to be covering defining your travel why, identifying what type of travel best suits you. We're also going to be talking about working abroad and what that can look like. And then we're going to talk more about like travel planning logistics, all the things you might want to consider. And trust me, it's a long list. You're probably thinking like my accommodation, my flight, etc. No, we're going to go into the heavy details. And then we're going to end off with suggested resources that we have available for you here at CanGap and beyond. Caspian says that they'd like to go to New Zealand, South Africa, and Costa Rica. Yes. Oh my gosh, those are such exciting destinations. I've been to Australia, not New Zealand, but Costa Rica. Ooh, what an incredible destination. I'm excited. That's where you want to head. So let's jump in. So defining your travel why. So I don't know if you guys are familiar at all with oh my gosh, I completely just blanked on his name. I was literally just talking about him in our fellowship, who coined the phrase like starting with your why. And it's really about by identifying the why, it's a lot easier for us to understand what our what and our how looks like. We're able to define those next steps. And I think that the greatest thing that you can answer to get started here is, why do you want to travel? Why do you want to travel? And it's a pretty broad question, but it'll help you sort of identify kind of those other pieces and help you unravel, the other things about like what that travel experience is actually going to look like. What are the things you want to get out of it? Who are the type of people that you want to meet? What kind of experience you want to have, like backpacking versus staying in luxury hotels. Those are 2 very different experiences and come from very different whys of travel. So that's a big one. And you don't need to answer it into today's session. This is something that you can write down. You can think about it later, but definitely you want to answer this first before you even start on that planning process. So like Caspian, you want to sit down and be like, why New Zealand versus, South Africa versus Costa Rica? Why do you want to travel in general? How did you end up thinking about those 3 destinations? There has got to be something in common between the 3 of them that is like connected to your travel why. And that's going to help you define what your travel style really is. And so that's going to be like, what experience do you want to have? So like I mentioned, like New Zealand is a pretty big destination for backpackers and adventure travel. I know a lot of people go to New Zealand for like bungee jumping and skydiving. Skydiving is something that I definitely did in Australia. South Africa might be a lot more wildlife. It might be even social justice focused. There's so much social justice history to learn from in South Africa in terms of innovation and political advocacy. And then Costa Rica, Costa Rica is home to 2.5% of the world's biodiversity. There's so much to learn about the health of our planet there, and understanding more about wildlife and being outside and exploring, hiking. And of course, we've got beautiful beaches in all those destinations, right? So what kind of experience do you want to have there? And how long can you handle being away from home? This is a biggie because often we think like, I'm an adult, it's fine. I can go away for a year and everything's going to be amazing. But if you've never been on your own before traveling, especially if you're thinking of doing like a solo experience or maybe you want to do a group experience, those might also influence the amount of time you might want to spend away. I know a lot of first-time travelers might try something like a group travel program where they're able to connect with community, kind of get to know a destination, learn from locals, to get the comfort they need from having a guide, facilitate that experience for them. And then maybe they might go off on their own when they're feeling more independent and confident and ready to tackle, a new destination, especially if it's in like a new language, a completely new culture. Those are things that you want to think about how that might impact you. Homesickness happens. I mean, I'm in my 30s and it still happens. So you want to be mindful about how long can you realistically handle being away. And maybe if for example, you've got 3 destinations on your bucket list for your gap year, maybe you do like a month at a time at each destination and you spread them out over your year. So not only do you kind of bring more balance to what you're doing in the year, you also are able to not feel that sense of like missing home, that homesickness, and be able to, maybe you extend your next trip a little bit longer every time you go. So you want to think about, what does that look like? How long can you handle being away from home? And then again, yes, do you want to travel with a friend? Do you want to travel solo? Do you want to travel with a group? I actually highly recommend checking out our Gapper Connect Discord. I'm going to drop the link in the chat. Our Gapper Connect Discord is a great place to connect with other gap year students who are also possibly planning travel. I know a few people have tried to coordinate like travel buddies. There's also like almost like a classifieds in there. So like, if, for example, Caspian, if you're like, I'm looking for a travel buddy to go to New Zealand with me, someone else might pop in there and be like, hey, New Zealand's on my bucket list. When are you thinking of going? And then you have an opportunity to travel with a new friend, experience that with somebody else who's in a very similar period of their life, like their gap year. Or maybe, you want to get out of your comfort zone and you're ready to like meet new people and go on a group trip, or again, just head out there solo. So you want to think about your comfort level there. Another thing you might want to think about in that process is, what budget are you working with? So your travel style is obviously going to be very impacted by the amount of money you're putting into your travels. So for example, if you, want to go to Costa Rica and you only have $1,000 to make that happen outside of like booking your flight, you might want to think of going a little bit more of a backpacker DIY style where you're staying in hostels, or maybe you're camping, or maybe you're staying in guest house where you actually are accommodated by locals and you get to have that kind of like homestay, like cultural exchange experience. Those are some of my favorite experiences. So I highly recommend looking into an option like a homestay. Maybe, in order for you to do a longer period of travel, you need to think about maybe you need to save extra money up front, depending on kind of style that you're looking for. Maybe, in helping you elongate that travel, the budget you're working with might need to accommodate you working in the destination. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what that can look like in terms of working abroad, but really identifying the kind of budget that you're working with is going to help you identify your travel style and what's possible, what's feasible within that budget. And that's going to include what type of accommodations that you're comfortable with, and what pace you want to travel at, of course. So that doesn't just mean like the period of time you're away. You also want to think about, well, if you are, say you only have 2 weeks in a destination, are you the type of person who wants to be like, I need to go to all these places. I'm going to go to like 7 different places in Costa Rica and I'm going to see the entire country in these 2 weeks? Or are you more of a, I want to really savor every experience. I want to slow down. I want to stay in one place, for 2 weeks at a time and really get to understand the local customs and the local people, have kind of like those everyday experiences in a destination and kind of live like a local, those are 2 very, very different experiences, where one's very slow paced, relaxed, and very much about like embracing the experience. Whereas if you're going to spend 2 weeks just bam, bam, bam to destinations, it's going to be a lot more fast paced, maybe need a little bit more budget because you're going to be on buses or trains or flights. So those are some things you want to think about in your travel style. And what type of activities do you want to do? So, maybe you are totally a DIYer and with a smaller budget, maybe you can do some of those things yourself. You can lead your own hikes, or, go engage in like free workshops, or, maybe you're just like you like to walk. I was always a walker in city destinations, just walking the city, getting the sense of the feel and all the, different senses that it has to offer. Or maybe you're going for something very specific. So like, for example, in New Zealand, South Africa, or Costa Rica, you could be going there for scuba diving. That's a very specific activity that's probably going to cost a little bit more money. You want to consider in your budget. And also, if you are not if you're not a certified diver, maybe you want to consider doing a course while you're there, so you can feel comfortable and confident in actually approaching that activity. And then here it says, do all your answers align with the people who you want to travel with? This is so important. So if you are thinking of traveling with friends, with gappers, with a group, you want to make sure that you're communicating all these values and your why and your interest in the activities, to ensure that you're all going to have a matched experience. Otherwise, it's very challenging to be the person who's like, I want to hit up all these destinations in 4 days. And your travel buddy is like, I actually just want to hang out on the beach for 4 days and do absolutely nothing. You might not make the best fit. And that's okay. You can still be best friends on a different trip and a different experience, but you want to consider that. And that also goes for booking like a travel program, right? So for example, if you do something like a ethical travel program that's very much about like getting your hands dirty with the local community and learning and doing and being part of an experience, versus doing a program that is very much about just like having a good time and everyone's kind of doing their own thing, and there's maybe like some activities in the evening, there's a little bit more free time. It's more just about kind of having a community you can go to in that process, but you have your own free schedule. Those are things you want to consider. Caspian, yep, I'm a certified diver. That's amazing. I guess I was naturally assuming that intuitively because of the 3 destinations that you suggested you want to go to. So that's really cool. I'd love to hear more about if diving is something that you're interested in doing there. Awesome. And what is so great to help you with this process is we actually have created a new travel style quiz. It is so awesome. I literally built it myself. And it is an amazing way to identify. It's like 10 questions. It'll help you kind of dive into some of those whys, whats, activities, those little components that we've kind of covered just now. And you'll get that link in your email after this workshop. It'll come right to your email. You can take the quiz, and your results will actually align you with suggested itineraries, suggested programs, and it'll just kind of help you in taking the next steps and actually clarifying. Now that you kind of have a clearer why you want to travel, you can start looking at the what and how. So let's talk about the who. Who can help you with planning your travel? So there's a few options. So one, there is travel agents. This is pretty old school. I don't know many young people who use travel agents anymore, but it is really a helpful resource, and it's something that probably your parents did as well. But travel agents are very much a thing. So those can be through an organization like Flight Center. It could be through sometimes you go into super centers, kind of like Walmart or something like that. They usually have sometimes travel centers where you can talk to like a travel agent or rep there to help you organize things. You also just sometimes Googling like travel agent and then maybe the destination you're trying to go to, or just general travel agent in your area. You'll be able to find someone who can help you build a custom itinerary for the type of travel that you're trying to look for, or even connect you with different programs that might align with your travel values. And then there's also group travel companies. So I always recommend starting with our program partners. So these are programs that have been vetted by CanGap. They are legitimate. They are incredible. They do wonderful, wonderful things. They provide incredible experiences. And you can check out those programs over on our programs page on the website. So I've just dropped that in the chat. I always recommend that's like a good first place to start, because you'll get a good sense of what's available that we are already backing and think is a great option for you. I'm going to just take a sip of tea before my throat gets a little dry. All right. So then in thinking about finding a good fit, this is so important. So once you've identified that why, you kind of started to identify the activities you want to do. If you're looking to go solo, group, go with your buddies, then you want to start thinking about other pieces that need to be kind of slotted into there. So number one is absolutely safety. So making sure that you're checking in on the local destination. I will share a website shortly that helps you check with the Canadian government in terms of travel advisories, making sure it's a safe place to go. You want to look into the destination. There's always, like, usually if you just Google the destination and maybe put like travel blogs, so if you put like Costa Rica travel blog, or maybe like the specific place in Costa Rica, so like the Osa Peninsula, Costa Rica travel blog, you'll probably get a lot of different helpful blogs and guides and supports to help you understand kind of the different safety levels in the area, things you might need to prepare for. For example, if you're going to really dense city areas, sometimes they recommend like having like a money belt, which is kind of like a thin fanny pack that you wear like inside the waistband of your pants to make sure that like no one can kind of pickpocket you. So those are things you want to think about. Of course, activities. So making sure that aligns with your why and your what. So obviously, if you were interested in diving, finding out what kind of diving experiences are available in that destination. You might want to even compare pricing, especially if you have to be budget conscious of your travel, thinking about what is included in an activity, what is not. Sometimes, for like a diving experience, maybe, the certificate is included. Maybe if you are already a certified diver, you can just do like a 3 or 5 day experience. That's probably going to be a lot less in terms of budget because you've already been certified. So it's more about just supporting you and giving you the gear, unless you're coming with your own. So again, things you want to look for is like what's included, what's not included. Sometimes you could book a day trip with an organization or a program provider, and maybe like lunch is not included and you need to provide your own lunch, or maybe it is included. So those details are things you want to consider, and so that you can finalize your itinerary and understand what you need to bring with you in order to make your experience optimal. And then, of course, age of participants. This is so important because if you end up booking a trip with a bunch of, retired seniors, you're probably still going to have a great time, but it's going to be a very different experience than if you're going with a bunch of gap year students, right? You also want to think group size. So I've been on group trips from anywhere from, 6 people to 50 people. And those are very, very different experiences, a very different level of community building as well. So you want to consider what makes sense to you. Do you like more of an intimate setting? Do you want more of like a diverse, robust group of people? And then, of course, there's things that like really dive into your values. Do you want to make sure that the programs and activities you're booking are aligned with your values of social justice and sustainability and ethical travel and giving back to the local community? Or maybe it's local owned. So, instead of staying at a Hilton, maybe you're staying at a mom and pop run guest house, and you get a much more authentic cultural experience. And then, of course, there's reputation. So there's always no harm in asking for testimonials from organizations, looking at the different testimonials they might have on their Google business, or there might be case studies or stories. They might share those things on their social media. So it's always good to kind of get a sense. And usually when you Google, you get kind of the good stuff. You're going to learn kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly. And for the most part, you're looking for the good, right? You don't really want to go with an organization that has too much bad and ugly. And as I was saying, the considerations you want to think about. So travel advisory. So travel.gc.ca/registration. So this is a place where you can actually register your travel for when you go abroad. So for example, whenever I head back to India, I always make sure that I'm registered so that they can send me updated travel advisories in case anything happens. So like, for example, when the COVID-19 pandemic hit in 2020, I was in India. And of course, because I was registered with the travel advisory in Canada, they knew that I was in India, and they knew to send me emails whenever flights to Canada became readily available so that I could register to get myself home if I wanted to. I didn't end up coming home, but there was that opportunity. So this is a really safe risk management thing that you want to consider, and I'm sure your parents would be very, very grateful for. And make sure you can also have them help you register your trip as well, so that if anything does happen, the government can step in and take care of you. You never know what could happen. There's always something going on, around the world, and this is just a great way to keep yourself safe and to make sure that the government takes care of you if anything happens. And then, of course, if you identify as an LGBTQ+ traveler, you want to take a look at I'm just going to type this into the chat as well. lta.org, to see kind of, what they advise around like travel and destination and keeping yourself safe. Unfortunately, we don't live in a perfectly equal world, and there are some destinations where, depending on how you identify, could impact your safety, could make you feel uncomfortable. So you really want to consider that. You want to make sure that you're seen in the destinations you're going to, so that there is no challenges around safety or risk. And again, if you are a BIPOC traveler, so the Black and Brown Travelers support here is greenbookglobal.com. I just put that. I know that there's also the Black Travel Alliance, which is really great. I don't know if that's .com or .org, but I've just dropped it there for you. So some things you want to think about in terms of when you're choosing your destination, and making sure that you don't feel ashamed or guilt, or like you have to hide a part of your identity. You should be celebrating who you are when you're visiting these destinations. I want to make sure that you feel safe and comfortable in visiting them. All right, let's talk about working abroad. So I'm just bringing the International Experience Canada slides into here. So International Experience Canada is one of our incredible sponsors and partners here at CanGap. And they literally exist to help you with all the things in terms of, actually, I gotta make this bigger because I can't see the writing. There we go. So about helping you find working travel experiences, skill-based learning experiences abroad on your travels. So international experience, how can you benefit from it? There's so much to learn about yourself. You are improving your life skills, like building itineraries and navigating a country in a different language and different cultures. Those are all life skills. Those are all incredible experiences that help you in identifying more of your personal identity, being more resilient and compassionate for different cultural groups around the world. You make international connections, you can improve language skills, you build your resume, and you actually do improve employment outcomes. It is proven that having experiential learning opportunities, especially out of country, look really, really good on a resume. It's something that excites employers. They want to hear more about it. It improves academic success because you get to have these really wonderful experiences that motivate and inspire you to continue your professional development journey. And it helps you understand the global market as you enter young adulthood. There are so many things to consider in terms of our economy and our social standing. You can learn so much about environmental justice, political advocacy by visiting different countries around the world. And did you know that to legally work in another country or travel for an extended period of time, you need to have a valid permit or visa? Yes, it is a thing. So although Canadian passports are absolutely wonderful and they provide us so much opportunity and privilege to travel, there are still many countries that you do need a visa for to visit, especially to work. So, even if you just wanted to hop over to France, even though you don't need a visa to go there as a Canadian, you do need a work permit or a work visa in order to engage in employment there. So a work permit or work visa allows you to work and live in a particular country, and International Experience Canada actually helps you secure one for up to 32 countries, I believe. So you can check and see what's on the list. I'll give you the website in a second. But they also help you with understanding kind of like work permit types, requirements, how to apply, because that varies per country. I gotta make this bigger because I can't see all my things. And can walk you through obtaining a work permit, because the process can be complex for some countries. Some it's a little bit easier, especially Western countries like or Commonwealth countries like Australia, New Zealand, Europe. They're a little bit easier, but other countries are a little bit more complex. So IEC kind of steps in and helps you with that. So there's two kind of like permits here. So there's our open work permits and there's employer specific permits. So the most common and popular work permit is a working holiday visa. So places like New Zealand and Australia and most of Europe offer these types of visas. I've also had one in the past. They're very easy to obtain. I actually think I got my working holiday for Australia processed in like less than 24 hours online, which is amazing. It allows you to fund or supplement your vacation with temporary work. So for example, let's say you only save $3,000 and you want to go to New Zealand for 6 months. $3,000 is probably not going to get you through 6 months, unfortunately, in this economy. So you want to think about how can you leverage that experience to get some work experience, to build community, live a little bit like a local, and, be able to kind of bring together those two experiences, be able to travel and as well as earn the money you need to enjoy that experience. The thing is with the working holiday visa though, is it is temporary work. So I believe you're only allowed to work in one place for up to 6 months at a time. So it's not like you can take a full-time position with a large organization and just stay. That would be a very different permit. You can only work, or you work for more than one employer in more than one location, and there's no need to secure a job before you apply or enter the country. So this is a lot more flexible for those who are kind of go with the flow or maybe country hopping. This is an option for you. And then employer-specific permits. So common are the international co-op or internships for students. There's also a young professionals categories for those looking for experience to support your career development. Those are also an option, but this has to be pre-arranged before you travel, so that you have to get a contract from the employer before you can actually apply for this type of visa. And that work permit is also tied specifically to that job or employer in that location. So whereas the working holiday visa, you can kind of jump from employer to employer, you can have even multiple roles. An employer-specific visa is very much about working for one employer for a specific period of time, and that can be more than 6 months as well. So International Experience Canada is part of the Government of Canada, and it manages youth mobility agreements with over 30 countries and foreign territories. And it just makes it so much easier for you young people ages 18 to 35. I believe they just increased it to 35 to get a work permit or visa to work and travel abroad. And they also support foreigners in coming to Canada to work in Canada for extended period. So yeah, work permits can be valid for up to 2 years for youth ages 18 to 35. Jasmine, just read the slide. So you're just making things up. Yeah, I know this. I think it's because I know this information so well because we've been working with IEC for so long. I don't even need the slides anymore because what they do is just so wonderful. And these are some of the countries that are eligible for you. So you can take a look at it. Take a quick look. You'll notice that Caspian, all of the destinations you are thinking about are on this list. Wink, wink. Oh, yeah. So a few things. IEC's recognized organizations provide help with additional services such as like orientation. So like orienting you to this entire process and going to the country. It also helps you with job search assistance and job placements, which is so awesome. These organizations may charge an extra fee, but if it's something that you are definitely passionate about, you really want to get work experience abroad, you want to have it, you're one of those people who'd like to have it all sorted before you go, you definitely want to take advantage of working with IEC's partner organizations. You do not have to use a recognized organization to obtain a work permit, correct? So, to obtain the work permit, you could just go through IEC, but then if you want the additional support in kind of building out your experience for working abroad, you have the opportunity to leverage the organizations that IEC works with. All right, so how do the requirements vary? So obviously there's age limit, so that's 18 to 35. It depends on the country also in terms of maximum length of stay, like 6 months to 2 years is usually the kind of average, but it really can vary. There's also, based on the country, there could be other various restrictions on the visa. So you want to be mindful and maybe do a little bit of research with IEC to learn more about that. There's obviously going to be fees to get the visa. You have to have financial requirements. So like, for example, I think for like going to France, you need to have like $3,500 dollars in your bank account, I believe, before you, like when you go to apply for the visa, because you need to show that you have enough financial means to sustain your stay. Because if you get there and for any, what if like you decide, I don't want to work and I don't want to do this and I'm going to just hang out. France doesn't just want you like, hanging out on the streets and do whatever you want. They want you to also be contributing to their economy with a working visa, right? So there's some requirements there to make sure that you're also set up and you're taken care of in case anything happens. And then of course there's processing time. So if you're thinking of going to work abroad in France next month, maybe the visa would take a little longer. You need to be mindful. So you want to look into that before actually planning your travels. So how to get started. So what you want to do is visit the Experiential Canada website. So I'm just dropping that in the chat. That's canada.com/IEC. And then from there, you can navigate. You can select the country you're interested to learn more about. And then there's research, discussion groups on what others have been done. There's lots of story telling on there regards to other young people who have gone to that country and taking an opportunity there, lots to inspire you. And this is also just what the website looks like. So when you go to canada.com/IEC, on the left-hand panel is for you, Canadian youth looking to work and travel abroad, whereas the right-hand panel is for foreign youth coming to Canada. So you're going to want to click on that left-hand panel, and that's going to take you here. So there'll be a drop-down menu of where do you want to go. You can choose the country. You can go back and forth. You can look at all the countries you're interested in, and it will give you all the details you need in order to move forward. And then, of course, it'll have information like all the requirements, general country info, and all the applicable links to move forward in applying for a work permit. So if you want to learn more from IEC, you can head over, you can follow them on Instagram. That's IEC.@_abroad. I'm just dropping that in the chat. And then, of course, I highly recommend going to their website first to kind of access everything. And then, of course, you can stay connected with them on Instagram and ask questions, etc. there. All right, I'm going to keep going. I'm not seeing any questions in the chat, and I still got lots to cover. So I'm going to switch back over to my slide. So that's everything for traveling abroad. We also have in Hopin, after this event, you can head over to the expo. So on the left panel on the side of your screen, you're going to notice there's a bunch of different venues that you can, or spaces you can visit in the virtual event space of Hopin. And one of them is called an expo. And in there, you'll actually be able to browse the different vendor booths of all of our program partners to learn more about what's available in terms of travel programs on your gap year. There is resources and how to take action and get in touch with their teams as well to kind of help you with planning and coordinating your trip. And then, of course, IEC also has a booth in there, so you can actually just go right from there if you'd like, instead of going and putting in the URL that I just dropped in the chat. All right, quick beverage. Let's continue. Travel logistics. Okay, so all right, so this is the nitty-gritty stuff. So definitely have your pen and paper ready. This is like a great checklist. Actually, Jasmine, that is a great idea. A travel logistics checklist. I am going to prepare that for you, and I'm going to send it to you. Okay, so some things you need to think about. So your flight. So obviously the price of your flight is going to be huge, and then also flight paths. So there's kind of two different ways you can go, right? So there's a direct flight. So that's going to take you from point A to point B, easy peasy. But then there's also, depending on where the airline is home base is, there might be a layover. So for example, when I fly to India and I fly Etihad, I'm going to fly from Toronto to Dubai to Delhi. And what's really awesome about flying with some of these other providers that are, whether it's Turkish Airlines and you stop in Istanbul, or Air France and you stop in Paris. What's really cool about these airlines is they actually offer you a free stopover. So what that means is, well, first of all, sometimes layover flights are actually less expensive than a direct flight, which, depending on if that's convenient for you or not. But with it being a cheaper flight and then having a free stopover, that means that you can actually stop in that destination for like X amount of days and experience that place and then go to your final destination. So for example, in the past, I didn't do this with Dubai. I've been to Dubai before, but I didn't do the stopover. I think, what did I do one time? I think it was the UK. That's what I did. I flew to London, and I got off in London and I explored the city for a few days, and then I hopped back on the next segment of my flight, and it took me to India. So that is what the layover can look like. And that's what a stopover is. It's like you actually stop instead of just laying over for a few hours. And ultimately what it looks like in booking that is like when you go to book your flight, it might offer you, so let's say you're looking to go to Costa Rica, and your layovers options will probably be in the US. So you would put like Toronto to, or sorry, you're coming from BC. So maybe you put Vancouver to, San Jose. That's going to be the A to B. And when the flights come up, it might give you a direct flight. It might give you a layover flight. Maybe it stops in Los Angeles for like a few hours. And if that's an option, what you can do is then you can research that flight, and you could put, Vancouver to Los Angeles to San Jose. and it'll actually be the same price to book the flight, but it'll give you options around stopping over. So it's like a multi-city itinerary. So you can stop for like 1 day, 2 day, 3 way. And I think you can stop for, it depends on the destination. Maybe you can stop for a week, maybe you can stop for a few weeks. You can look into it in your research, but that's an option for your flights. And then of course with accommodation, like I mentioned before, there's a few different styles here. There's a hotel. So that's very much something that you probably experienced traveling with your parents. You get a hotel room and it's your own room with your own bathroom. And sometimes maybe you get a kitchenette and it's your own private space. And that's obviously going to be the most expensive option because it's only accommodating one person. Whereas a hostel, sometimes that can be a room of 4 beds. That could be 2 bunk beds. It could be 6 bunk beds. It could be 8 bunk beds. And you can find options that are co-ed. You can find them that are gender specific. You also want to make sure that they, depending on how you identify, you want to make sure that you're finding an affirming space as well. So making sure that you look into that when you are looking at hostels. And then there's homestays. So this is our homestay or guest house. These are the options to stay with like a local family where, they would probably be cooking you dinner in their home kitchen, and you get to, stay in their guest room and kind of have like a local mom and dad kind of experience. And like I said, those are always my favorite. Those are like I've stayed in very, very fancy hotels and really, really cool hostels. Absolutely. But homestays, guest house are hands down some of my favorite experiences. Just those are the people that you just end up remembering forever, and they just influence your life in such beautiful ways. And then, of course, thinking about that safety and risk management piece, you want to think about your insurance. So if you're under 18, sometimes you are still covered by your parents through whatever insurance they might have. So sometimes they might be covered. You might be covered under their credit card. So if they book your trip on their credit card, you'll be covered. If you have your own credit card, you can look into, especially if you have something like an Avion or a specific travel points card, those usually offer some kind of travel insurance. So you want to just contact your bank to know what that insurance looks like, because sometimes it doesn't cover everything, especially if you are, for example, going diving on your trip. That's a very specific risk. And so you could look into a company like CAA. I always recommend for those who are doing things like diving or really like extreme sports, or they're really like going out on the, the off the beat track. World Nomads is an incredible resource for accessing accessible insurance that kind of, covers everything, dots the I's, crosses the T's, so that, because you can actually customize based on the different activities to make sure that you're covered. So it's better to be safe than sorry. So you always want to make sure that you're accommodating in your budget for travel insurance. Trust me, you do not want to travel without travel insurance. Do not be that person. So that's something you want to consider in building your budget and thinking about what makes sense in terms of an insurance provider based on the activities that you're going to be doing on your gap year. And then things you may not have thought about, like your communication plan and cell phone compatibility. So, there's options, like if you're like with Bell or Rogers or Fido, there's always options to have like they charge you like $10 Canadian a day in the local time zone when you're abroad. This is actually a super expensive option because if you're away for more than 7 days, like, oh my gosh, that's a huge expense you're going to have to put into your travel budget. So maybe something you want to think about is your phone unlocked? Do you have a spare cell phone that's unlocked that you can take with you on your trip? And then you can get like a local SIM card. You can get a local SIM card usually at your airport. For example, because my phone currently is an Indian phone and my provider is in India, when I came to Canada, I got a Chatter mobile SIM card right at the airport. And what's awesome is because they want you to buy at the airport, they usually give you awesome deals there. So like my Chatter SIM is like literally giving me the best deal. I have like unlimited everything in Canada, and it's like at least $50 cheaper than anyone's basic monthly plan in Canada. So you want to check out and see what is available in terms of SIMs. I know something that's becoming really popular these days are eSIMs. So it's not like a physical SIM you put in your phone. You can register online with like a local provider in like a European country, for example, and you get like your phone has to be compatible, so you have to look into it. But you get like a kind of like a serial number that you enter into your phone, and then it activates that eSIM for you, and then you can call. It gives you a local number, and you can call in that local number and access the local data and stuff like that. And then of course, and also with communication plan is also considering like how frequently are you checking in back home? Are there things that you need to be that you're responsible for while you're away? Is your phone bill due while you're away, and who's going to pay it? So just funny things like that you might want to consider in terms of budget and things you want to think about in terms of communication. And then dates. This is so important. You don't want to end up in Costa Rica in the rainy season, do you? Right? So you want to consider that. New Zealand and Australia have opposite seasons. So if you decide to go to New Zealand or Australia in June, it's winter there. So you want to be really mindful of what those seasons are and those destinations. Just doing a quick Google search, making sure it aligns with the type of trip you want to have and the activities you want to indulge in. And something else to think about is actually the off season. So when it is rainy season, when it is winter, especially in like Asian countries, so like India or Thailand, those off seasons of winter. So like right now, or like our monsoon season, for example, in the middle of summer, those are usually not peak times to travel. So sometimes you can find more affordable flights. Sometimes there'll be discounts on flights or accommodation. You'll find maybe deals on programs. So another thing to think about in terms of budget, length of travel, and when you actually want to go visit that destination. So what you're going to want to do after this is you want to just make an initial budget. So yes, it will be very high at first. Make an initial budget just based on what is like the ideal trip for you. You want to include your flights, your accommodations, your food, any entrance fees to programs or parks or activities. You want to any fees you need to pay for actual like tours, etc. while you're there. Any gear you need to buy or that you need to rent. So like maybe if you're going backpacking, maybe you don't even own a backpack. So how much is a 40 or 60 liter backpack from, Mountain Equipment Co-op or Decathlon? And then of course, insurance. So those are some of the initial things you'll want to start doing now, and just start with initial quotes, and then it'll help you kind of scale forward, scale backwards where you need to be. And you can start making adjustments in alignment with your values and your interests and the kind of experiences that you want to have. And look at when items will need to be paid for. This is so important. So flights will need to be booked well before your trip. That's probably going to be the first thing that you pay for. But of course, if you're registering maybe with like a group travel program, maybe, the deposit of, 50% of the program fee is due as soon as you book. And then maybe the remainder isn't due until you travel. And if you book something like 6 months out, that gives you a little bit of time to pay for it, right? So make sure you have enough to pay for each part of your travels at, whatever the timeline is. So like if you have a 6-month timeline, you probably want to create kind of like a work back schedule in that budget of like, okay, well, here's what needs to be paid for, the week before, the month before, 2 months before, 3 months before. And that'll help you, make it a little bit more accessible in terms of approaching your budget and making sure that you cover all of your bases. So what happens if you can't afford your dream trip? Well, there are lots of funding opportunities available out there. So how can you make more money? There are tons of scholarships and bursaries available. A lot of program partners, so especially our program partners, I know that they offer a lot of subsidies and financial aid. There's also a lot of free programming that's available with our partners. So again, that's cangap.ca/programs. You can check out what's there. Some organizations might have a sliding scale of payment based on maybe your personal experiences, or where if your family's a little bit more low income, so that you can still access those experiences. So you always want to check out what financial aid is available. Of course, here at CanGap, we are actually opening our Gap Year scholarships in April. So that's cangap.ca/scholarships. So in the spring, we give away a $750 scholarship to an upcoming Gap Year student. We also give a $750 scholarship to a Gap Year alum. So a student that is finishing their Gap Year and is preparing for post-secondary in the fall, or maybe even potentially taking another Gap Year, who knows? But those options are available for you. We also give it another one in the fall at Gap Year launch. So you want to consider all these kind of things for helping you reduce your cost. I've seen people in the past do, fundraisers to help fund their travels. I remember one of the first experiences I had in volunteering abroad. the program fee was quite hefty, and I actually fundraised among my friends and family to afford the program fee. And that was so, so, so special. And it also provided this incredible platform for me to, I think from that experience, I ended up actually starting a blog that I carried on for years while I traveled, because I wanted to share the stories and the impact being had on the ground with those who had contributed to my journey, who are part of the story now, and show them how not only do their dollars allow a young woman to step out of the country and build skills for her career, but also the further impact that had on the ground with locals that I was working with. So, quick recap. So this is ultimately what you want to be doing over the next, the next couple of weeks, next couple of months, as you really start to think about taking those next steps with your travels. So number one, you want to figure out your priorities. That is your why, the types of activities you want to take, the kind of people you want to be surrounded with, the kind of experiences you want to have. And then number two, you're going to take all that and you're going to start to make a plan. So like I mentioned, a little work back schedule is really fun, because number three is you're going to make a budget. And of course, based on the plan is how you can build that budget and play with that budget. And number four is adjust your plan and budget as you need it, because you might do that for months, depending on where you're at. You might come across new information, new financial resources, new opportunities, etc. So that is what you're going to be wanting to do as you start to plan your travels. And then of course, to have so much freaking fun. Like, you have to remember that in all this planning and organizing and budgeting, it sounds kind of like at first, but this process is supposed to be fun. You have to remember that the process is also part of the experience. It's not just about landing and getting to see a new country. It's about how you prepared yourself to get there, how you you worked your butt off to make that money, how you adjusted your plan, how you were able to meet new people and organize an incredible experience to help you move forward in having this amazing time abroad on your gap year. So do not forget to have fun. And of course, be sure to complete the quiz from the email you will be sent after this session. It'll go right to your inbox, and you can take it. You'll find out your travel style. It'll recommend a few different itinerary suggestions. You'll get connected with some of our amazing program partners based on what makes sense for your travel style. And then of course, you're always welcome to jump over to cangap.ca/programs to learn more about all of our incredible partners and the different experiences they have available to you. And I believe that is it, friends.